Hey everybody, it's RCK. If you're here again, I'm glad to have you back. I've really been enjoying the YouTube process. I'm here to bring you your next national overview. Now, in today's video, we're going to be looking at an LA nation, late age. Since so far we have gone through early age, middle age, and I did want to get a late age in, just trying to get a rhythm going with these videos. Today we're going to be looking at LA Gath. It's a nation that I really enjoy. It's always kind of been fun to play. I've played it a handful of times. I know I've really been wishy-washy about whether or not I'm going to show a pretender within my videos, but I'm trying to keep the videos below a certain time limit because people don't want to sit down and watch an hour and 30-minute video. But today I decided I was going to show one, or just my take on the nation, as I would say. Um, Other than that, I do plan on coming out with a multiplayer game eventually. I haven't quite decided. I'm very indecisive on it, on which ones I want to show. On top of this, I've also been really enjoying the comments I've been getting lately from you guys. It's really interesting. I really enjoy it. I do plan on having a profile picture in a way. I just haven't quite decided on what I wanted it to be. So I do plan on getting that done. So further ado, let's go ahead and get started on this nation. I know that's what you guys are here for. So to start off, I want to go ahead and look at the sites, go ahead and get that out of the way. So for Gath, we're going to have the Palace of Sage Kings. Now this isn't going to give you any gems, but it is going to give you two or one of your sacreds right here, which I'll go over that. And this is another one which was going to be a commander. We'll look over those later. Now the Temple of the Sage King, that's going to be the site that's actually going to be producing you gems throughout this game for your capital. Now it was going to produce you 2 astral, 1 fire, and 1 earth. Now you can assume that these are going to be many of your main magic paths, but you also have pretty decent nature. I believe you go rather high up in nature. I know you can get up to death too, and you also have very strong blood paths. So it's really interesting to see that those were the gems that they decided to give you, but it is what it is. On top of this, that your temples, the only downside is your temples are going to cost around 800 gold, double the price they normally are. It's really unfortunate, but there has to be some drawbacks, you know. You can't always have just a perfect nation to play, because everyone can't have a perfect nation. So let's go ahead and start looking at the units that we have here. Now you guys are probably going to watch me struggle on saying these names. It's not words that we really say very often, and even if we're playing the game, we just kind of look at them as like, oh, okay, spearman. I don't have to really say the first part, but it is what it is, you know. So the Nefertali spearman, let's say that. Okay, just going ahead and looking at this unit. Okay, you got a bronze sphere, 13 damage. You got your average human stats. He is also a javelin unit, which could come in handy. This is going to be a rather cheap unit for you, 10 gold, 11 resources, 9 recruitment. You're going to be able to make a decent amount of these, especially if you decide to go scales with the nation. Now, I'm going to be showing my pretender at the end of the video. I'm sorry, just trying to step off track on that, but I did want to try to pick a place to put it in, but I think it would be better at the end. No real stats. I mean, they have wasteland survival, so they're a little bit better in waste. I wouldn't really, yeah, I guess surviving. So they cost less supplies. Now, wastes are going to be very key for your nation. I'll go through explaining that later because there is one spell I want to talk about in particular. But other than that, I mean, protection 9. There's not much to say about this unit. Average morale, average magical resistance. So let's go ahead and go on to the next one, and this is going to be the Ribbonite Archer. Like I said, very same human stats, a little bit lower on the attack skill and the defense skill, just being an archer. That's normally how it is. Less resources because he has less armor, and you can tell from his protection here. Same amount of recruitment points. He's going to have a short bow and a bronze dagger, and also have wasteland survival. Now, this unit, I highly doubt you're going to be making any of them because short bows are just not really that good at all when it comes to the late age. When it comes to any late age nation, to be honest. because you're looking at, even your indies are going to be mostly either crossbows, heavy infantry, heavy cavalry. All of the units in the nation, they're all going to have heavy infantry units. Um, I'm not just talking about your nation, but other nations besides yours. It's almost like playing an entire age of MA Ulm. I wouldn't say to that degree, but there you're going to notice a lot more of armor than you normally would in either EA or MA. So not too much to say about this unit. Yes, you could probably do something like flame arrows or maybe something like that, but then again, this unit still isn't something that you can just spam out as well, so it really doesn't have no place. Next on, we're going to be looking at the Benjaminite Slinger. Alright, so a little bit more expensive, one more resource, one more gold. Now, but the really big thing about this is that you're going to be having 2 bronze swords that will deal pierce damage and slash damage at 14 damage apiece while having sling. Now, the sling really isn't that important, but I could see a place where maybe on occasion that these slingers might come in handy, since you'll be able to put 3 of them to a square, and on top of that, I mean, you're looking at 6 attacks per square, and probably likely you're able to, I wouldn't necessarily say mass them, but you're going to have a lot to really harass enemies down, so it might be a good unit against other units like giants and other things like that, maybe. On the rest of our roster here, we will have units that will do rather well against those too, just because of how much damage they deal. But I could see a place where these guys could work on occasion. They do have Wasteland Survival. They have Pillager, that might come in handy for you or not, and Ambidextrous, of course, helps them because they have 2 bronze swords. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one. We have the Gadite Swordsman. So this is going to be your, I wouldn't necessarily say core unit, but you're starting to get into a more heavy infantry style or medium style infantry. You have protection of 16. They're going to be costing a lot more resources now, so they're going to definitely be putting a hurting on the amount that you can make. You have a decent 15 damage bronze sword. I mean, it's 1 more damage than the slingers have, but I mean, you're losing an additional attack, so is it really worth it to you? But on top of that, I mean, he does have slash damage, and he has a javelin to throw. Now, this is the first we've seen that these troops actually have fire resistance, and I believe through the rest of the roster, you're going to be seeing this as well. I believe all of them have Wasteland Survival, but it's not too much of a big deal. So moving on to the next one, there really wasn't much to say about him. You have the Zebulunite Soldier. So these guys are going to be formation fighters, so you're going to be able to fit 4 to a square instead of 3 to a square. And they will have Wasteland Survival. A little bit lower, 4 less protection than the last troop had. You can obviously tell through how many resources it costs. There's a pretty big difference from 28 to 15, so that's a pretty big difference. It's definitely going to be nice to have formation fighter on these guys. Still, you won't have up to 6 attacks per square, but 4 attacks is going to be nice too, especially being a higher protection attack or higher protection. Like most of these units here, I highly doubt you spend a lot of time making them. Next, we're going to go to the Asherite Soldier. Very low attack density, only 6, or a sword, and it's not even pierce damage at that, with only 16 damage, really high resources, really high recruitment points, 17 protection. I really wouldn't recommend making these guys. Yes, they do have a tower shield, but at this point, you're going to be fighting against crossbows. It's really not that big of a deal if you have a tower shield or not. Yes, it's going to help, but it's really not going to make that much of a difference since they can just punch through. Trying not to spend a lot of time on that guy, I'm going to go ahead and go on to the next. This is going to be the Zebulunite Hornblower. Now, I promise, I did try to practice a few of these names before we started, but I can tell I didn't do that well anyway. I don't know if you've seen these. I don't believe, actually I do believe we have had this in our earlier national overview where we had a standard unit. Now this is going to give any other units that's in the same squad as the Hornblower here an additional +1 to their morale. So it's going to be pretty nice. I believe so far all these other units, they just have average 10 morale as we were looking for. Actually, no, wrong one. That one had 13. That one had 11. That one had 8. So they're kind of in between the median for low and low and medium morale. But the Hornblower is going to be nice just to throw one into any squad that you have. It's going to be really great. Yeah, it's going to cost 20 gold, so two of the archers or whatever cost you have. Yeah, you're not going to make a lot of these guys, but you're really not going to want a lot of these guys since you're only going to want one per squad if you decide to use them like that. And then I would only use them in the lower morale squads. I mean, you could put them into the squads that have 13 or 14 morale already and just push them up that one extra if you're really worried about it. But in all honesty, you're not. It's not too bad. Not really much to talk about these guys. I mean, they have 12 protection. They have a dagger. Not much. They do have formation fire, which is interesting, and you could try to work something out with those other spearmen units that you had. But other than that, it's just decent standard. A handful of nations have them, but I believe there's a lot more nations that don't have them. So let's go ahead and get started on what's the word I'm looking for? All these Gath nations. You have Gath, you have Ashdod, you have Hinnom. Now they're going to have a lot of lower tier human troops, but they're also going to have wouldn't really say high, they're more like high society troops in their nation. Looking at these first, I don't believe they're quite giant size yet. These troops are only size 3. I believe on average giants are between size 4 and size 6. Now you're going to have the Gitti soldier. 25 gold, 25 resources, 15 recruitment points. You're going to be looking at around 2.5 or 2.4 hit points compared to an average human being around 10. Yeah, let's see an ordinary human soldier about 10. A giant has about 30. See, we're close to it. But like I said, we were one size below being a giant. Now these troops are going to have a spear. It's going to be very nice pierce damage, very high because of how high their strength is. So dealing around 18 damage, and then they also have a very nice javelin throw. And like I mentioned previously, these troops will also have fire resistance, so you can keep that in mind later down the line, depending on what magic you have researched, depending on like if you want to cast evocation spells, and you wouldn't really have to worry about it as much. Now, fire resistance 3 is very low, so I wouldn't recommend casting Firestorm or anything like that. But it's definitely a starting point that you can build off of by casting fire resistant spells to really buff out your army if you do decide to go after large fire evocation spells. Decent unit. I haven't tried expansion with these troops, but I do see them working if you decide to go that route. I should have tried them for this video, but I decided to go for a different route. And I actually skipped over a soldier here. My bad, I was thinking about it. You have your first sacred, in which case I believe it should be fine if I go over this with the other last unit in your roster because they're both sacreds. You're looking at a 15 gold, 17 resource, 14 recruitment point human soldier here that's going to be sacred. They have a patrol bonus of 2, so whenever you're decide it's time for you to blood hunt, these troops are going to work really well with patrolling the provinces down that you decide to blood hunt in. They also have wasteland survival. Now that will have a single attack being a bronze sword that will have slash and pierce damage around 14 for the damage value because they are only a human size unit, so they're going to be having around 10 strength. They'll have around 11 hit points. That doesn't really matter, about one more than normal. Protection 12. I mean, decent medium troop protection. Not too much to worry about. The really big thing about these guys is that they're going to be recruit anywhere. since if you notice at the bottom it says Levite Zealot. Now if you had a troop or a sacred that you could only recruit at your capital, it would say that. As I go down to this last one here, being a Gibber, you can read, can only be recruited in your capital. So what this means is that every castle you make can recruit these zealots, and it's going to be very nice because I wouldn't necessarily say you're going to want to be patrolling these castles, because at that point you put money in these provinces that you're destroying by blood hunting them, but you're going to be able to easily go to the province beside it or go anywhere like that and just have a steady supply of troops. Or if you want to build up a large amount of troops fast for patrolling purposes, even though you actually don't need many of these guys since they do have a patrol bonus, it's really going to help you out. And everyone kind of knows that during the late age that the population of the provinces are going to be a lot higher. So you're going to be looking at that and seeing a lot of provinces that you're going to be able to go to and blood hunt, of course. So that's going to bring us to our last unit sacred here, being the Gibber. Now this is going to be a really, really nice unit for your nation. It's definitely one of my favorites. So this is going to be a very expensive size 4 unit, being 70 gold. Now these guys are going to be expensive, and you're going to really hate to lose them. Next, you're looking at 43 resources. With protection 14, I do believe that's rather high. 23 recruitment points is low considering, so it's not too bad. Now, size 4, attack skill 12, rather low attack skill. Defensive 16 is actually pretty nice, but I'm pretty sure any of your units or giant units are going to be harassed down anyway. So starting off at a higher defense skill is nice, but it won't be very high for long. Strength of 19. That's really going to show off here in your one sword weapon. So very low attack density, dealing around 27 damage. Now 27 is a lot for anything, especially that it's going to be 27 magical before you're blessed, so you're not going to need to take magical weapons on this bless. On top of that, morale 13, so decent morale. Magical resistance of 13, so not too bad magical resistance either. Later on in the game, I would probably still recommend putting up anti-magic, but that's just me. These guys have fire resistance 4, so it's decent. But if you also notice, here's a new icon here for the tag. We've seen the Wasteland Survival, but it's going to be Gluttony too, so these guys are going to cost more supplies, or I wouldn't say cost more supplies. They're going to count as more supplies. If you've ever had a problem with supplies, it's basically you can't feed all your troops, so they're going to start to starve. I don't believe we've gone over that yet. But these guys just consume more. They just eat a lot more than a normal unit, probably. Because they're giants, it just makes sense. Like I said before, they're sacred, and I'll be showing that bliss to you here later on after I go through the commanders. But these are going to be very, very nice units for you. I'm also glad that they have a cap here, because I don't know why, but a lot of units it seems like just don't have caps now. That's just more of an early age and middle age problem. I know in late age, like I said before, they're going to have a lot more protection, so you really wouldn't have to worry about that as much. But it's just nice to see a really decent sacred coming out of a nation. So to start off here, we're going to start looking at the commanders, and we're going to just start off with your average scout that you're going to have. Now this is going to be a really tough one to say, so I'm just going to say scout. 25 gold, 6 resources, 1 recruitment point, with a 55 stealth. So it's just your average scout, forest, mountain, wasteland, survival. Now I don't believe an average scout will have that, but it's really not a big deal. Short bow, no big deal. So let's go ahead and go to the next one. Now I do have a lot to talk about 2 of the mages that you're going to have in your nation. The first one is going to be your sage right here, being a 45 gold, 2 resource, 1 recruitment point mage. Now I say mage because they do have a chance of getting a random, but it is going to be very low, being a 10% chance. Now what really makes these guys shine here is that they're 1 recruitment point. So whenever you start off a game as LA Gath, you're going to start with a citadel, being that you can make that every turn you can get 3 recruitment points. So every turn you can make 3 of these guys. So being at 45 gold and 6, you're going to be making 3 of these guys a turn, increasing your research by 18 a turn. Now these guys will not be affected by drain or by magic scales, since they don't have a magic scale themselves, other than very few that will get one. So regardless if you take drain 3, you're still going to be only getting 6 research. On top of that, these troops are sacred, so they're going to have extremely low upkeep. So really nice. They are old, but you really won't have to worry about that as much. Now normally when people look at this nation, this is going to be their go-to research monkey. This is what they're always going to make. Just because they see this troop, they can make 3 of them a turn, and they can just crank them out, and they think that's going to be the best. Now I've done a little bit of calculating on them, and honestly enough, the mage that I would be recruiting over here would be, for my research anyway, would be the Sibley. Now they're like, oh really? Why is that? You know, 2 recruitment points are going to take longer to make. You're not going to get as many of them. They cost more gold. They have a lot more upkeep. So just go ahead and start off. Yeah, you're not going to be able to make as many of these guys. So looking over the span of 2 turns, yes, you can make 2, or you can make 6 sages for every 3 of these Sibyls. Because if you remember, the citadels, they do count as 3 recruitment points turn. So for the first turn, you're going to only make 1 Sibyl, and then for the second turn, you'll make 2, and then for the third turn, you'll make 1, and then for the fourth turn, you'll make 2. So just looking over a 2-turn span, you're going to have 3 Sibyls, and you're going to have 6 sages. So looking at those 6 sages, alright, so 6 times 6, of course, that's going to be 36 research points. Now for this nation, I will normally always take magic 3. So the Sibyls here, they're actually going to be pushed up to 12 research points per Sibyl. Now just go ahead and thinking about that. Okay, on your second turn, you're going to have 3 of these guys being 12 research apiece. You're already up to 36 research points. On top of this, yes, they are more expensive, but you have to think you'd be making 6 sages versus 3 Sibyls. So if we go ahead and do that math in our head, those 6 sages are going to cost us 270 gold, while these Sibyls here are only going to cost us 195 gold over those 2 turns on the initial payment cost. Now I will say, yes, the upkeep is going to be in the favor of the sages in the long term of the game. You're looking at 18 per, so 6 times 18, and then I would go ahead and divide that by 12, since I keep things on a turn-to-turn basis. So you're looking at 9 upkeep altogether for 6, while on the other hand, you're going to be having the Sibyls being 52 per, so 52 times 3, and that's going to be divided by 12 because we want to get on a turn-by-turn basis. And you're going to be looking at 13 gold for those 3 Sibyls for that 1 turn. So altogether, I mean, you will have a 69% increase in upkeep between the Sibyls and the Sages, but looking at it from short run to a long run here, there's going to be a lot more initial cost when you're going with the Sages, and you're going to be getting the same amount of research. So in the early game, I do completely agree that you should go Sibyls first, and if you decide to go, or if you decide to make Sages into the late game, that's okay. You know, it's really up to you. The only reason why I also like going Sibyls is because you're guaranteed a mage. Not only are you guaranteed a mage, you're guaranteed an astral nature mage. Really not nature as much, but the astral is really a big deal. Very communion. I mean, you have as many communion slaves. They can work well against early rushes, being like, say, just going up the Thaumaturgy 2 and getting, oh man, what's the name of that spell? Mind burn. On top of this, they will have Fortune Teller and a supply bonus. So keeping these with your Gibbers, which will cost you more supplies anyway, really they will kind of counteract that. And on top of this, you can, any bad events, they can prevent them. So for my pretender that I created, I did go Misfortune 3, but that's just because of the build that I decided to go with for the nation and the units that I planned on making. But at the end of the day, it is up to whatever you decide to do with your game. I am definitely no pro at this, but I'll try my best to help anyone out. Looking next, I want to go to some of the regular commanders. I know we spent a long time on those two mages, but it's really a deciding point on how you want to research for the rest of the game, honestly. So next here we're looking at the Benjamite commander. It's basically a Benjamite slinger. That's all it is, in all honesty. But he'll have 40 leadership, so not even that great of a leader. Going on to the next one here, we'll have the gritty commander here, and this is just going to be your size 3 commander, 85 gold, kind of pricey, but he is going to be 80 leadership. So, I mean, you're going to get a bonus onto your morale, which is going to be nice. He can have up to 3 separate squads without taking a, I wouldn't say decrease, morale penalty. Kind of high in the resources, being only protection 14, but no big deal. They do hit pretty tough, or pretty hard, but nothing compared to these Gibbers that just hit like trucks. Next, you're going to look at your Levite Priest. Now, these are just really cheap. They're actually the same upkeep as your mages or sages that you have. Just holy ones. You could use these guys in the beginning of the game to help expand. If you decide to do that with your Gibbers, you could do that and have them just bless and then attack in small groups. Now, it's something I've tried. I'll have a few explanations for you for them. But there is a pretty large risk when you're doing this, and I believe one of my battles will show you what can happen, if I remember correctly. So just a really cheap priest. They're nice to have. They're also 1 recruitment point, which I believe all cheap priests are anyway, that are just holding ones. So next we'll go to the Abba. Now this is going to be showing some more of your magic diversity in the game. Yep. So you have 175 gold priest here. Double human hit points. You have a heretic, so I wouldn't recommend making too many of these guys, but I would recommend having a couple, because the healer trait is a really great trait that not many nations have, and off the top of my head I can only think of about 1 or 2 nations that actually have this trait that's recruitable anyway. But what this trait is that I'll read it out to you. A unit with this ability will heal other units in the same province automatically. Up to 1 affliction per month might be removed for every point in his ability. Undead inanimate objects will not be affected by this ability. So you could drop one of these guys there in your capital, because if you decide to go with the sages in their old age, they're going to be picking up afflictions, and these guys are going to be counteracting that. On top of that, you can have these guys moving with your troops. Because at that point, if you're going to war with somebody, I mean, you really wouldn't have to worry about you preaching their own dominion score down in their own provinces if you're at war with them. I mean, I wouldn't want to do this too much in your own area, but in theirs, it's really not too big of a deal. And nature too is nice, which I'll talk about later in one of our magic goals. You will have astral, earth, and fire crosspath, which all of these could be rather decent in all honesty, because I mean, I would probably say fire would most likely be your least, but astral you can join in the communions. Earth you can self buff and do things like iris skin and become thugs. Having nature 2, you'll be able to do regeneration and things like that, getting, I don't know if it's 2 to 3 hit points per turn, and other things on top of that. And he might actually come out to be a little decent thug that can take maybe 6 to 10 PD out. Now on top of this, he will have a supply bonus of 20. The reason for this is because he's a nature 2 mage. The only reason the Sybil has supply bonus 10 is because he's a nature 1 mage. If anyone didn't know that, having a path in nature will give the mage a supply bonus for the rest of the army. These guys are stealthy, so you could throw a couple of them into an enemy's area or domain, nation area, I guess, and start to kind of hurt their dom, but I wouldn't recommend it since these, I mean, they're expensive troops. I mean, you wouldn't want to lose them. They have pretty high upkeep. I mean, not too high, but a lot higher than other things that you have. And I just wouldn't want to throw a mage that has 3 different paths just kind of out there, not researching, not helping armies. He'd just be sitting there at that point. So, let's see. Next, we're going to go here to the Cohen. Now, this is going to be a really, really nice mage that you're going to want a good amount of, because they're going to be your blood 1. Or they're guaranteed a blood 1. They're holy 2. It's not too big of a deal. And they're, like I said, these paths, they're just as good as, like I said, the other nation, not the other nation, the other commander we had, or mage before this. Of course, with Astral, you can join into communions. Now, this person, or this mage, I probably recommend them being a master at that point, since they're holy 2. Because if they have 2 slaves underneath them, they can be pushed up to holy 3. And of course, they can already go into communions since they have blood 1 for Sabbaths. On top of this, I mean, earth spells, maybe you can make them into a thug if that's what you decide. Fire, you can do a handful of things with that. But yeah, these troops here, they're definitely going to be, I mean, upkeep's not too bad on them. They're going to be your blood hunters. So next we're going to go to the well, let's see, it's a little tough to read on that page there. The Yediani. So looking at this unit, so you already have 2, well, you have 1 decent path. Death's pretty good. So on top of that, you will get an additional death cross path here if you're lucky, because at that point, I mean, going up to death 2 is really nice, since you'll have horde of, you can make skull, what's the word? Skull staffs, which will give you a death booster, pushing you up to death 3, which was going to be nice. Death 2 will also give you the ability to cast Horde of Skeletons if you decide to go up through enchantment. Any Earth 2 mage is going to be really, really great for you, because it's going to allow you to buff your units in any alteration spells that you decide to get, like Iron Warriors and things like that. Because if you remember your Gibbers, they're going to have low protection. I believe it was around 14 when we talked about it. But just being able to push that up is going to be really, really nice, since you're going to be wanting a lot of Gibbers in your armies because they're just so strong. Fire Crosspath really isn't that great. I mean, you can do a handful of evocation spells having the fire and death, but other than that, they wouldn't really be that great for you. Fire resistance 3, which we've talked about before. 104 upkeep. Not the best, but if you wanted to go even higher, faster research, which I wouldn't recommend it, you could recruit those guys instead. It's going to cost you a lot more money. It's going to cost you a lot more in upkeep. But at that point, you'll be getting 14 to 28, 42, maybe 42 research a turn, I believe, or 42 research every 2 turns. I think, off the top, I don't know, I might be wrong on that. But it's something you can think about if you have the money for it. But I would still probably want the Civils just because of their paths. So next up on our roster here, we have the Serene. Now this is going to be your Gibber commander, essentially. They do have a chance to get paths here. Now, fire path, that would be okay on the thug. Earth path is the one you're definitely going to want if you ever get one. And Astral really isn't that good at all. Whenever you have Astral on a thug or a super combatant, you're going to want really, really high Astral. Having Astral 1, that means another Astral 1 unit can just mind duel you or magic duel you, and there's like a 50% chance you just outright die, regardless of how much gold you put into that unit or how much resources it cost. He does have pretty high protection, so I can see you thugging these guys out for sure, regardless of what magic path they get. But in hindsight, you have to look. They can't bless themselves. They're not priests, but they are sacred. Um, just like the other Gibbers here, they're really strong, deals a lot of damage. So for our last unit here, which this is probably why you won't really need to use those other troops and communions to get holy threes, but if you do come into a case, say you're fighting Lemuria or our Ghost Nation or something like that, and you just want more holy threes, that's definitely a way you can do it. But you do have a recruitable holy three that will cost you 2 or will cost you 4 recruitment points. So it will still take you 2 turns to make this unit here. Even a little bit more fire resistance, 5, really not that big of a deal. So we will be sacred. The only thing being sacred is really going to help you, because I didn't really choose to go with a bless that will really revolve around mages. It's just going to really help out his upkeep for every turn that you're going to have him for. Now, this is going to be a recruitable blood 2 mage, really decent. It's going to help you get into higher blood paths if you didn't take blood on your commander, or not commander, on your pretender. Another very interesting paths here. Now, for this first one, you're going to get 2 of the same one, which actually this isn't bad at all. I really like this because in any Astral 2s, it's not too bad for Astral 2s anyway, but I mean, you'll be able to cast things just straight out. Just you can go in communions, become communion masters, and cast things just mind burn, regardless if you're in communion or not. Holy or Earth 2s, they're going to be really good at giving buffs to other units in your line. That might be something you're really into. Now, being able to get Fire 2s, it's a lot nicer to have a Fire 2 than it is to have a Earth or Fire 1. But it is what it is. It's definitely not your most favorite path here, but by having this, you're able to bring a very high fire into communions without having to have having too many slaves. Because, like I said before, he is a blood mage, so he's going to be able to join with you. Leadership 80, so he's a decent leader if you decide to put troops with him. 55 hit points is going to be okay. Protection 9, pretty low. He is a size 5 unit, so he's going to be in a square by himself, essentially, unless you have other size 1 units. Other than that, I mean, Gluttony 5, like we said with the Gibbers, they just consume more supplies, but I highly doubt you're going to have so many of these guys in a single province that they're going to be eating up so many supplies. It's going to be your Gibbers that's going to be, because you're going to have a lot more Gibbers than you're going to ever have these mages anyway. But having the blood is going to be really nice for the, not paths, the spells, national spells that you're going to have. So overall, that's going to be the last bit here for our national overview, going over the commanders and the units. We've already spoke about here the natural features of this nation and their downsides of having the 800 cost temples. So we'll go ahead and look into this game I set up here. You see we have some different things. Now, from the start of the game, I haven't been that, it's just turn 11. I haven't tried expanding much. I'm just trying to get the research. I had the blood hunt with this guy, so it was really odd. I wouldn't recommend doing it the way I did it. But I will say I spent a turn recruiting Gibbers, which I had 3 and 1 unit, 1 zealot in here. This is my beginning expansion party that I got in the very beginning of the game. Now this party, this is how I scripted them, if you're curious. So fire, I didn't put anything. They should just probably be on attack closest, to be honest. And these had an additional Gibber. Gibber died. They were just on attack rear. And now I was almost positive I set this to Divine Blessing and cast spells. So that one expansion party left the capital here, went here, 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 here. No, actually went here, here, and then here. So that one expansion party actually gave you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 provinces. So really nice. When you're using these Gibbers, you're very unlikely to take any attrition at all with them. They're just very nice. Just an event here that I got this from. Now, other than that, I will be showing you. Now, the only reason I had to come here, I'll explain this later. Now, go ahead and show you a few battles here. So this is going to be the expansion party, which he is set to cast Divine Blessing and stuff, so. Yes, this is a very small amount of troops, but I believe the troops before this were barbarians, and I think there was around 20 to 30 of them. But still, if you pick and choose, you can usually get a lot of mileage out of this first little expansion party. And like you see here, the attack rear is really coming in handy as he's going after these commanders. Yeah, okay, he's starting to hit some of them there. Now they're done with those troops, so they're going to move in. These Gibbers here just gonna stop these guys. Oh wow, you're running away. Jesus, you cowards. Okay, disregard that. We won anyway. And we lost one zealot. So next, this was something I mentioned when we were going over the priest, and some of the pitfalls you may run into if you decide to expand with Gibbers. And I'm sure you can already tell what went wrong because you've seen this before. Okay, I had 4 Gibbers and I had 2 of these Slinger guys. I just wanted to put some cheap guys in their group so they wouldn't take any morale, I wouldn't say morale penalties, but I do believe it's morale penalties if you don't have a certain number of troops in a squad. Let's play the battle here. So you only have 4 crossbow units, but 1 crossbow unit is going to get a really, really lucky shot off on this guy right here. Bam, right there, 11 damage. So in turn, that's going to make all of my Gibbers here, which were all blessed, rout as soon as they get in contact with me. Well, actually, they don't get in contact. I forget. They just run away. They're like, oh, nope, he's gone. We're leaving. And that's that. The only losses we take is the 1 commander, so you do have to be very careful. Now, I believe I put him in the middle of the squad. You could go with putting him farther back in the squad, just maybe right behind the square. That might be able to work out. So let's go ahead and look at this second battle here. I believe this is kind of the same thing we had going on. Now in this one, it must have been, I just had a handful of extra slingers I just threw into this, but I do believe this is a much larger force here. Maybe around 25% more than the last force had. They actually have 3 commanders. I believe the last one had 3 commanders too. So no real reason to have these guys. I just needed a couple extra guys in there. Now I believe you could probably get away with, I wouldn't want to hold, I wouldn't want to just say attack, because you definitely want to hold to make sure you get majority of your units blessed. So it's really difficult to say, because I'm sure those archers are going to be just on attack closest regardless. See, we're just going to see them meet the line here. I'll just go ahead and go on fast forward, go ahead and speed it up. Now these Gibbers are just going to be chewing through this heavy infantry, because 16 protection is not going to be anything for 27 or even higher, which I haven't gone over to bless, damage that you're going to be looking at. And they're just running away. Couldn't even make it to the archers before they ran. So let's go ahead and look at the casualties. So we did end up losing all the slingers that I threw in there. Like I said, I wasn't really worried about them. I just wanted to make sure the Gibbers didn't take any morale hits. And the independents lost everything. Well, because they routed, they lost everything. But I mean, altogether, our troops killed 19 out of 34 before they ran, and that was just having 11. So 1 to 3 ratio here, it's gonna be pretty decent. Not too bad. So you do have to be careful with expansion if you decide to expand with your sacreds. I know a lot of people really like to expand with sacreds just because the nation you pick, I mean, usually enough, whatever nation you pick, they're going to revolve around the sacreds is really what's going to make the nation. So on top of this, we can actually go ahead and go to our research. Now I do have 3 different research goals set up, but this is more of my own opinion on this. I do see people going different ways, and especially depending on how early on you get either rushed or decide to go to war with somebody. Now, I'll actually give you 4 just in case if maybe you get a little unlucky, I would say, when it comes to your randoms in your magic school. If you don't have Thaumaturgy 1, I would recommend getting Thaumaturgy 1. You have a lot of astral mages, and just being able to get communion and communion masters and communion slaves, that's really going to help you out. As far as your blood goes, if you get blood, I mean that's going to be blood master, or Sabbath master, Sabbath slave. So it's really up to you. And I mean, 50 research isn't that bad. I mean, we can definitely get it in 1 turn if we decided to, but it's one of those things you really like to have, regardless of what time or when you're in the game. Especially since I, let me rephrase that, I decided to go with the Sybil research, since they are astral mages. So it's up to you. But as for the other research goals, now I'm not sure in which order you would want to get these in. I know which order I would, but I could definitely see an argument for going in different ways. So I could definitely see for the first research goal going down to level 4 in construction. So the reason why I say this is because yes, you will have Blood 1 mages. Now, well, thinking about this again, I mean, in Construction 4, you're going to be able to start to get magic boosters, which is going to be nice. You're going to be able to get, I mean, Thistle Mace to go up to Nature 3. You're going to be able to get Earth Boots to go up to Earth 3. You're going to be able to get, there's one more thing on the tip of my tongue, but I just can't remember which booster it was right now at the moment. On top of that, you're going to be able to get Sanguine Dowsing Rods. Now what that is going to give any unit Blood Search 1. So it's really going to increase the amount of blood slaves you get per blood hunt. Since you're going to be able to want a lot of those, they only cost 5 blood slaves per. So that is definitely, in my mind, one of your research goals. I wouldn't say it's your first, but I do agree that it's going to be a research goal. Going on to the next one, now this is definitely my own opinion of this, but I would have a research goal being around Alteration 5 here, because I could see it's really a tough call. I could see you going down and getting Wooden Warriors and Iron Warriors, since both of these spells are going to be really easy for your nation to cast. And since you're planning on using mostly army-based, well, I wouldn't say army, but mostly unit-based armies, you could attempt to do things like thugging and things like that, which is going to be on the way, because you'll be able to get things like Iron Skin, Elemental Fortitude. Swarm is actually a pretty good one for all the mages you have, but that's if you have any nature access at the time, so you will have to do some searching to get that, because starting off you won't have any. But between Wooden Warriors, which will give you natural protection 10 and fire susceptible by 5, but if you remember correctly, majority of your units actually have fire resistance, so that's going to counteract that being extremely low, so it's not going to matter as much as it would otherwise. You get some decent fire spells. Incinerate's a really good one if you have any high fire magic. But Iron Warriors grant natural protection of 20 or higher if it's already at 18, and you're susceptible to shock, but it's not too big of a deal. But having natural protection of 20 is really going to beef up any of the units that you have in your army there. Because if you notice, I mean 14 protection, 16 protection, I mean that's not really that big of a deal. But once you get that natural protection of 20 on your base, I mean that's going to push you well enough over 20 protection. So really interesting. It's just an idea. It's really up to you if you decide to go that route. And lastly, I would extremely recommend going to level 3 in blood at least if you do anything, because you have this little spell right here called Scapegoats. So it summons a seer. So for 8 blood slaves you can summon 2 seers, and can only be cast in waste. And now that's why I said waste, you're going to really be looking for them in expansion to make sure you have them. On occasion I believe your capital might start on a waste, but it could go either way. But you're going to be able to get a lot of blood slave for just 2, so it's really going to, or let me rephrase that, it's going to be very efficient for you to only spend 8 and get 2 of these really nice units, which I will show you in just one turn. Okay, 2 turns. Let's go ahead and go on to this one. So we have the blood magic complete. So we'll go over here. You can do this with a simple blood 1. You don't need a blood 2 for this. Let's just cast Scapegoats. Let's end the turn again. Go back in. Dang, okay. Well, that's actually pretty interesting, since this is going to be a great example of how good these shears are. I did not expect we were going to get a unit or a battle here, but this was actually very nice. So just look at them. This is what your seers are going to look like. Now they are demon units. They have Berserker 4, which is going to be really, really nice. They don't need to eat, so they're going to work well with your Gibbers that will need extra supply if you plan on buffing the rest of your army out with this. Now the one thing you have to worry about, low protection. And this is why I considered alteration as one of your key research goals. Because, I mean, they're not going to have any armor. Oh, this is all natural protection. So buffing that up to 20 and sitting around 20 protection is going to be extremely nice for these guys. Decent attack skill, average defense skill, 28 hit points. So you're looking almost triple the amount of human health. Size 3 units, you're going to only be able to fit 2 per square. Magical resistance 15 and morale of 30. So this is going to be really, really nice here. And if you didn't know, whenever a unit goes berserk anyway, they're never going to rout. This unit also has dark vision. So down the line, if you decide to do something with those death randoms that you have, maybe you can build a communion matrix or something like, or I think that was the name of it, I don't believe, but it's a magical item that makes it so units can enter in communions. Maybe you can cast darkness down the road. Maybe that's something that you can do. You will definitely have enough slaves to be able to work with that. A big deal here is sacred, so this is going to really work well with our bless when I show it to you. Three attacks, so we are looking at an attack density of 6 per square. And that's going to be really nice if you remember me talking about that earlier. So I'll go ahead and show you our bless. So if you notice, these guys are a lot stronger now. They also have very high attack skill, so they're going to be hitting enemy units almost every turn. And on top of that, they're going to be hitting them for really hard. And since these units are so cheap, it's going to be nice. And that's without them being berserk. So they're going to go up to 21 attack skill, 15 defense skill. It's going to be nice. And I believe it will show a good example here when they run in these sea dogs. But our bless, of course, morale +1 is what everyone gets off the base, but attack skill +4 and strength +8. And let's see what these guys do in action. Hopefully they will hurry up and get into combat. Okay. They're just ripping those squares apart whenever anyone comes into them. So he took some hits there, and now that one is have his berserk. So, oh, it's berserk. Okay, so when you are berserk, your defense skill goes down. I forgot about that. That was my mistake. But your attack skill does go up. I believe, and your protection goes up as well. So that's nice, actually. But like I said, they're just deleting anything that's in front of these squares. I mean, yes, I know these aren't the best units to really look at and say, oh, well, of course they're deleting anything in squares, but you know, it is what it is. It's just a happy coincidence that these guys were just so happened to attack us when we made these two. And that's the rest of them. So overall, the Seers actually killed 13 of them. So they killed half of the enemy units, actually, compared to the rest of the 30 units that we had there. Or not 30, 27. So really, really interesting, really great unit. Only having them cost 8. I mean, late in the late game, you're looking at making well enough over 100 per turn, 100 blood slaves per turn. I mean, you could even go up to 200 depending on how large your empire is at the time and how much you're able to actually blood hunt. But it's going to be really, really nice. You're going to be able to really crank these guys out when it comes to any wasteland that you have. And I just want to really show those guys off. Next, I'm going to head over to the Pretender. I did say I wanted to look over that for you guys. It's really gonna be. I believe this is a really decent command, or not commander, Pretender. I enjoy it a lot whenever I play. It's pretty interesting. So let me just let's just quit without saving. What's the worst thing that can happen? And I will be going. Let's just create a Pretender god. I don't believe I saved the one when I made the startup game, but it is the same one that I always make for it. If I can find it. There we go. So the Pretender chassis that I choose for this nation is going to be the Golden Idol. Now you have plenty of other choices to choose from, obviously, and you have a couple of decent ones you can do. But this is just the one that I chose because it's already in most of the paths that we want to be in. So to start off, I'm going to go ahead and put in the magic paths that I took. I believe that's what it was, 666. Which is terrible now that I say it out loud, actually, so forget that I said that. So up to Heat 3, Growth 3, Misfortune 3, Magic 3, Production. Okay, let's take that one down. Alright, so this is what I decided to go with. I believe this is the exact build that I decided to go with too, with only 4 design points left. The attack skill, so you're going to be able to go up to, gives you going to be +4 attack skill. So it can be rather difficult if, regardless of how much strength you give your unit, if they have a low attack skill, they're not going to be able to hit as well. On top of this, having +8 strength here is going to be really, really nice. And these paths that we have decided to go into, blood is going to be really, really nice whenever our Pretender comes out, because we did take an imprisoned Pretender to be able to really cast late game blood spells. We're going to be able to look at late game maybe blood vortex, and a way to really even get more and more slaves. We took high earth. Now this actually also puts you into a couple of globals. If you decide to do that, Earthflood, Deep Well, Riches from Beneath, there's a couple of really nice things you can do with having that high of earth. well, also having this cross path here, you can actually go up to Earth 7 pretty easily. And I believe it's construction 4, construction 6, but you make an Earth Blood item pretty efficiently with these paths, and you can actually put it as your miscellaneous slot. So it's a really not interesting way to go up to Earth 7 if you need to. On top of this, Fire 6, it's nice to have, well, really wouldn't say nice to have. Having the cross path isn't too bad. You're really just in it for the attack skill. I mean, you have a handful of things. I mean, you can cast like Eternal Prior and get like 20 fire gems a turn if you decide to do a global with it. Other than that, I mean, there's a handful of things you can do. So let's go ahead and look at the scales now. The scales here, now you can really switch either production or order if you want to. Those are two really interchangeable. If you find, say in your test that you find that you have a lot more resources than you need, and say, okay, well, let me drop the production and go up in order so I can have more recruitment points, and then vice versa. It's really up to you. I always find that having order is a little bit better because recruitment points are usually something I cap out on, since resources, you can really build, I mean, you can go build a castle on a mountain or something like that and have a very, very large amount of resources. Where recruitment points, I mean, yeah, you build a castle on a farm, you have a lot of recruitment points, but at that time you really don't have a lot of resources. So, I mean, it's a lot of take and give. So, it's really what you decide to go with if you want to change any of these out. Dominion 6. You still want to take a pretty high dominion since you're going to be wanting to make a lot of sacreds, a lot of the zealots from your extra castles. I mean, if you can actually make 6 zealots a turn from a castle, I mean that's going to be really nice for you. Of course, I do drop heat down or heat up, I guess in that sense, but it will take a negative effect on your scales. But I mean, I feel like you can definitely fight in Heat 3. It's not going to bother you as much as it would bother other nations by taking Heat 3. You are able to take Growth 3, which is going to be really nice. Hopefully it's going to be able to counteract some of the blood hunting that you're doing. I'm not too scared of taking Misfortune 3. I know a lot of people advise against it, but since you do have Fortune Tellers, it's a skill that I can dump. And I already explained earlier why I take Magic 3, and it has to do with the Sibyls and the Sages conversation I had in the beginning of the episode. So overall, I really enjoy this nation. I think anyone that's listening to this should definitely just try it out if they want to, or at least just try it out when it comes to, what's the word, just practice if that's what you want. And maybe if you like it enough, maybe you should try it out in a multiplayer game. Like I said, everyone's always looking to play games. I mean, it's a really great community to have decided to join here. Made a lot of friends throughout the maybe about a year that I've played, and I've had a really great time. I've played a lot of Dominions. Just recently, I put a review for the game. I think I reached 1,000 hours in it, but I know it's really not a lot for most people, or most of the veterans of the game anyway. But I don't consider myself one at all. So, alright guys, it's really been a great episode. I really look forward to any constructive criticism you may leave me in the comments. I always enjoy talking to you guys. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, of course. For next Friday, I haven't completely decided on the nation that I've wanted to do, but I have an idea, so it's one I enjoy. I think a lot of people look forward to it because there's not many overviews on this nation whenever you go and look it up. So it's gonna be really interesting come next week. I have to do a lot of work on it. There's a lot to know about it, if you know what I mean. So everyone, I hope you guys have a great day. I'll see you next Friday. Bye.